And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Marilyn Monroe. Thank you for listening. Hello, Cleo.
Hello, Richard.
How are you?
Oh, I'm still all right. Are you still all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. Of course I'm all right. Reading all of these brilliant books.
Good.
Now, when you found this book, this was a real eye-opener to me.
I know.
Because I didn't even know this person existed.
No, me neither. And I had no idea if it would be a good book or not, or some nonsense. Anyway, so it's Marilyn Monroe, My Sister Marilyn, by her sister, Bernice Miracle, apparently.
Miracle, yeah, Miracle.
Miracle.
Because I thought, what a fantastic name, Miracle.
I know.
And then halfway through the book says you pronounce it Miracle. And then it was too late because I'd already pronounced it Miracle in my head.
Yeah, Bernice Miracle's a brilliant name.
It really is. Why would you want to pronounce it Miracle?
No, I don't know. And her husband, Paris Miracle.
Yeah, I'd want to be a miracle.
Me too.
So because I know that you, like me, are a huge Marilyn fan and have read every biography going about her over the years.
I won't say every, but I've really
A lot of
deeply
them.
investigated her. Yeah, I really
So how
have.
did we both know that she didn't have a sister?
I've
She
absolutely
does
clue.
have
Well,
a sister.
I mean, partly I think it's revealed in this book is that Marilyn went absolutely out of her way to say to her, never talk to the press, and it's for your own good. This will protect you. You need to have a normal life. You have no idea how mad it's going to get. And so therefore they never, ever, ever once, ever gave a story away. So they just didn't really report it. And right at the end when she was at the airport going to Marilyn's funeral, spoiler, that she said the press were there going, are you Marilyn's sister? Are you Marilyn's sister? To everybody going through the airport. They didn't even know what she looked like.
Mm.
So they kept it such a good secret that we still don't know. And unless you're a massive enough fan.
No, but such a good secret that even because Marilyn's been dead a long time now, but even those biographies that are written after her death, I still didn't know she had a sister. Unless I've just forgotten about it.
No, but also I guess they don't mention her. She's not showbiz, it's not a story. It's just an ordinary person who happens to be related to her.
And I loved that about this book, that there's quite an ordinariness about this book. Being a lifelong fan of Marilyn Monroe, I discovered new things reading this book.
Yeah, I know.
A different side to her entirely.
It's true, and I think it's going to be one of those things where, a bit like Frank Sinatra, you could literally read everything there is and you're never going to get tired of these people. There's certain people that are just so fascinating, so complex.
Yeah.
You could read about them forever.
Do you know what? You're right, because after I finished reading this book, I went straight online and I just started reading more about Marilyn. And
I
I just
did
thought,
too.
you know, I'd happily sit here and read about her for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I know. I did that. I finished the book and then went online and read her whole life through
Yeah.
as the world knows it. And I thought, wow, she didn't tell her sister the half of it.
Well, yeah.
But what she did share with her sister is the half of it that we don't know.
Yes.
We don't know ordinary Marilyn. Everyone else knows all the other Marilyn stories that she kept from her sister.
Well, do you know what? I think this is a good way of looking at it. We knew about Marilyn Monroe. We didn't know too much about Norma Jean Baker. And that comes through in this book.
As a very, very... For example, she's not even called Norma Jean Baker. She's Norma Jean Mortensen.
But I found out something like half an hour ago on Wikipedia, which shocked me even more.
What was that? Who her real dad is?
Yeah. Did you just find that out?
Oh, I did too.
So that was only discovered 2 years ago through her DNA.
Yeah, that's right. It's not exactly that interesting who he is, but it's still amazing they found out.
Yeah. Let's start and talk about it as
Yeah,
we go.
let's start. Let's start.
Marilyn Monroe. Not her real name. We've got
Norma
here we
Jean
go.
Mortensen, which is not even her real dad's name, but she doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's complex.
It's really
complex. There's a family tree in this book. They've drawn out a family tree and then added on all these other people because most really her family weren't really related to her.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a real classic poor America story, isn't it? The village raises your children. It's that.
I mean, it's wonderful, really. They all pitched in and helped.
It is, actually. There's some good people.
Yeah, there really is.
Yeah.
And she is literally she's not Marilyn Monroe at this point. She's just a child.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's amazing how many people took that little girl under their wing until they couldn't.
Absolutely. But then the complicated life goes back and back and back. Just
Yeah.
poor farmery types of immigrant America. It's just It's all of that. Anyway, so Ma Baker, I know a song about that. Gladys Baker, her before married name, what do you call that?
Maiden name, yeah.
Maiden name was Monroe. So that's where Monroe comes from. She married Jasper Baker when she was 15 and they had 2 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, Robert Kermit. I didn't even know Kermit was anything other than a frog. Did you?
No, and it's amazing to see that somebody actually has that name.
Yeah.
Kermit.
Robert Kermit.
Marilyn Monroe has a brother called Kermit.
Amazing, she really did. He was born in 1917 and Bernice was born in 1919. But they got divorced when the kids were little and off goes Jasper, steals the kids and takes them to Kentucky, this being Kermit and Bernice.
So do you think at that time that's because Gladys, the mum, was already displaying signs of mental illness and he was worried about his kids?
Well, I mean, yeah, she was a paranoid schizophrenic diagnosed many years later. I think that's always in you a bit, isn't it? But then he was a drunk. Who knows what happened there? Oh, I know, it says at some point that she'd seen him coming down the road with another woman. You get little snippets of information throughout the book, don't you? You have to piece it together, which they're doing, basically, because both Bernice, who's writing this book, and Marilyn both didn't know their mother at all, really. So they're piecing together information as they go as well. But yeah, he took them to Flatlick, Louisville. Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah, Flatlick.
It just sounds like hillbilly town, doesn't it? Flatlick. And he married a much older woman who looked after Bernice and Robert Kermit and was really kind.
Yeah.
So at least there was one good mother there.
I know, but this poor boy, gosh, what a life for that little lad. He didn't have it easy, did he?
I know. He fell out the back of a car. He fell out the back of a car because cars didn't have lids, did they? They were open.
Lids. Do you mean a roof?
So yeah, he just fell out the back when it was moving. And that injured his hip. The plaster came off. He was wonky. He had years in hospital with that. And then he put a firecracker in a Coke bottle, which exploded in his face and he lost an eye. And eventually he got an infection in his leg, which had killed him at only 14.
Yeah, his kidneys failed.
Yeah, poor little fella.
He never even had any inkling that his sister would be Marilyn Monroe. That's how tragic that little boy's life was.
She never knew him either.
She never knew him. He was gone before she came into their lives.
Yeah.
When we started reading this book, I was kind of like, oh, going to find out stuff about Marilyn. Actually, you find out some really interesting story about the family before Marilyn even came into it.
Exactly. This is just ordinary people's lives, basically. It's just a totally random thing that this woman became Marilyn Monroe. You know, the rest of it's just ordinary people's ordinary lives.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating, of course.
So Bernice, bless her, Bernice has lost her big brother.
I know, and around that exact time, well, Marilyn was Marilyn's how much younger? 7 years younger? So she was about 5 at this time, meanwhile, and her mum was losing the plot. What happened is her mum was so poor that Marilyn was actually, well, should we call her Norma Jean at this point? Or
yeah, sure.
Marilyn. Yeah, she was Norma Jean.
Yeah, she's Norma Jean.
She wasn't Marilyn yet. She was born in a charity ward. Her mum just couldn't afford to keep her, so she got the neighbours to take the baby and paid the neighbours $25 a month. And she just visited at weekends because the husband had left before Norma Jean was even born.
Yeah.
And then she worked at this. She was a cutter in a film place. That's Hollywood for you. For 7 years, saving really hard. And she took out a loan and bought a house, which was clearly beyond her means. It was big enough that she could also take lodgers. An English actor couple and their grown-up daughter as lodgers. It's something odd about that.
Yeah.
Because she says they weren't nice to Norma Jean.
And she got rid of them eventually because they treated Norma Jean quite badly.
Yeah, do you think... There's lots of stories that Marilyn had some sort of abuse and it could be these lodgers. And Bernice is like, no, nothing happened. She never told me anything like that. And straight away, this early on, I'm thinking... I don't think she's telling you everything. I think she wants you to know this creation that she wants you to know of this lovely sister. I don't think she wants you to know all this bad stuff that's happened to her.
Oh, right. You see, I was also kind of getting from this that Bernice obviously adores her sister, and Marilyn Monroe has such a public image of being somebody who really slept around in Hollywood and she was really abused as a child. And I think Bernice didn't want to put that out there because every biography written about her illustrates her like that. And I think that her sister really just wants to pull the balance back, that actually Norma Jean / Marilyn was just a really lovely girl who wasn't abused and didn't put it around. And I think there is because we're so ingrained to think about Marilyn Monroe as this sex symbol who came from an abusive childhood, it's hard for us to accept she might not have been.
I know.
So I don't think we'll ever know the truth.
It is hard, though, because that's pretty suspicious. There were people in the house who didn't treat Marilyn well.
Yeah.
Well, that's already some information, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And we absolutely know when she was older, she was sleeping with absolutely everybody.
But how do we know that?
I mean, we've read it in Tony Curtis's book in detail. We know that she was sleeping with an older
studio executive
bloke from the studios,
using his house at the
Tony
weekend.
Curtis tells us that you can read anybody else's stories there, and I know, but I just don't think that she's telling her the whole truth. I mean, she definitely had an affair with Frank Sinatra
And JFK.
but Bernice says they were just friends. She's just not telling her. She doesn't want her sister to see her like that. I think she's got a chance to be normal in someone's eyes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
I think.
Yeah. But that also means that Bernice believes her sister's word above everything. By the way, can we just say the pictures of Bernice in this book, she's as attractive as Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, she absolutely is.
So Gladys had some good genes.
Yeah, she did. The first time they got in touch, when Bernice was 20 and Marilyn was 13, they sent photos to each other. The picture of Marilyn, I think she was 12. She looks about 25. Her hair's gorgeous, all curly. She's covered in makeup. And then, later on, she's like, I don't want to just be seen as a sex symbol. I want to be seen as a serious actress. Like, you're obsessed with beauty. She always was. Bernice says all they do is play dress up, and she's so into her makeup and hair, and it's all about that. Well, if you want to be seen as a serious actor, your whole persona is being unbelievably beautiful and sexy. It's there. You can't ignore it.
No, you can't ignore
it. What are you supposed to do with that?
But maybe when she gets older, she realises how empty that is, or maybe has realised when she gets to her late 20s, if that's how she's lived her life and has been treated. Because
maybe she wanted to evolve.
Yeah, of course.
And then she couldn't. She got stuck.
Well, she kind of did a bit.
That's possible.
She did get critical acclaim towards the end, didn't she?
She did, though. She did. She just had to fight really hard for it.
Oh, yeah. I think that's half her problem. Anyway, we'll get to her problems.
But oh my God, those young pictures in the 15-year-old and then the married at 16 pictures. Yeah, she's just stunning. Yeah, you're right, they're both stunning. They are both beautiful women. Yeah.
And if Gladys wasn't, because there are a couple pictures of Gladys in the book, if she wasn't so mad, she'd be stunning too.
Yeah, I know. No, it's true. They said their mum's really beautiful, but she never smiles. I mean, people light up when they smile, don't they?
Yeah, it's true.
And she never did. So, yeah.
So Marilyn is with family friends.
She's, with family friends. Oh, yeah, her mum saves up for this house and then she loses her job, so she can't keep up the payments on the house.
There are a few catalysts, aren't there, that drive her mum mad.
So, Marilyn actually lives with her mum and these lodgers for a while. Something's wrong there. Then she loses her job. She can't afford the repayments. The house is repossessed, and that gives her a nervous breakdown. Yeah. That's what they all are telling Bernice, that's what triggered it.
It's her first stint at the mental institution, isn't it?
Yeah, long stint, actually. Yeah, she has such a breakdown, and it's paranoid delusions. Everyone's trying to kill her. It's that bad. Because I always worry that people get locked away for nothing, and then they drug them up, and that makes them mad. But I think she probably was quite unhinged.
Yeah, and do you know what? If it's got to that stage, they don't just shut somebody away at their first sign of madness.
No.
That means little Norma Jean, that little girl, is living with an unhinged mum.
Yeah.
So it's not nice for her. It must be quite scary.
No, it's not good.
And also these lodgers are being horrible to her as well.
Yeah. No, it's not good at all.
Dear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very unstable. And the best people who take her in is this woman, Grace, who becomes her sort of guardian. She has a new husband called Doc, and he has 3 kids, 9, 7 and 5. And when they get married, they take Norma Jean in. Oh, she's been in a children's home for 2 years. After the first breakdown of the mother, she's sent to a children's home for 2 years at age 9. And so this woman, Grace, and Doc take her in when she's 11 with these other kids. And you can see that by the time she's 12, she's dressing up as an adult. She's obviously just trying to get independence, I'd have thought.
Yeah, she's been bumped around so much and ends up in the children's home. Yeah, I think she just, even though people are very kind and look after her, these family friends, she's probably learned she can't rely on her mum, obviously. So she needs to just look after herself.
Yeah, she wouldn't have a sense of safety, would she? You don't know what's going to happen to her next.
So she's living with this family and she has friends and she's a young teenage girl. And then one of the neighbours has this handsome older son called Jimmy. Marilyn likes him, but he's out of her league, obviously, because she's still like 13 and he's ready to leave school.
Yeah, he's 18, yeah. She's 13.
And, you know, when you're 13 and somebody's 18, they're a proper grown-up adult, aren't they?
Mm. But he was driving them to school, wasn't he? So they got to know him because Grace had asked him to drive them to school. I think she set the whole thing up. I think it was virtually an arranged marriage. I really do. I think an absolute setup from the start.
Yeah, Grace arranges for Jimmy and Norma Jean to go on a date. So you're right, actually. I mean, in a way, I think that's a nice thing. Grace knows Norma Jean needs looking after. She doesn't have anywhere to go. So she's seen a young man in the neighbourhood who she knows is very responsible and can give Norma Jean a good life. So she's putting them together.
Yeah, a nice bloke by all accounts. He seems nice. Yeah, and this is 1941. So, you know, it's more closer to that time where the answer for a girl, it isn't a career. That's not an option.
It's marriage.
It's still just before the war when women started working. Yeah, it's marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of training you up, you train you up to be a wife. So it was a good move, actually. If she hadn't become ambitious, she probably would have stuck at that and had kids and just been a happy person.
Yeah.
Because they really seemed to get on.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, they really did, yeah.
So she was 15, he was 20 when they got together, and they went always outside, it says. They were always like fishing and swimming and walking outside. It sounds really nice. They properly loved each other.
And she loved kids as well, like he had nephews and nieces, and any time that somebody has a younger child in this book, Norma Jean absolutely dotes on them.
Yeah.
And the children love her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, you know, she probably, at the age of 16, because she doesn't have these Hollywood aspirations at the moment, she's thinking, you know, she's going to stick around and have a big family with this handsome man who actually then gets drafted to go into the war. Because obviously America joined the war a bit later. And then, they get married.
Yeah, they do. I know.
She's 16.
She'd only just turned 16. They had to wait till she turned 16. But she looks so much older.
God, that wedding photo. I mean, they both look like Hollywood stars.
And he says she was the most mature 16-year-old he ever met.
Yeah, but those men always say that when they go with someone younger. Oh, she was so grown
Fair
up.
enough.
She was the most mature one I ever met.
But considering she looked 25 and she was 12, I mean... Yeah, no, she'd been through some stuff though, and to find a lovely man and have some stability must have, and become a homemaker.
When he got drafted,
yeah, but off he goes to war.
Yeah, she begged him. She really wanted to try to have a baby before he went off to war, and it just didn't happen. So it goes to show that at the age of 16, she really wants to be a mother.
Yeah,
it's just in her.
I thought about that. I was thinking if she'd have had a baby, would she have still become Marilyn Monroe? And I think she would have. It would have just been a kid that suffers.
Yeah,
you know, that gets looked after by the village while she goes off to become Marilyn Monroe. I bet you.
Yeah, and we'd have read a book about her daughter saying what an awful mother she was.
Yeah.
This textbook at this point. We know how these things work now.
Yes.
So he's gone for a couple of years, isn't he?
And meanwhile, by 1944, she got a job in an assembly line as a chute packer.
Chute packer?
I know. It sounds wrong, but I don't think it is. I've looked for the joke. I can't find it.
She packed chutes for a living. And then this guy comes in taking photos. He's like documenting the war. And he goes into this factory to see the effort women are making during the war.
Yeah,
and
that was his assignment. Yeah, to actually try and promote women doing jobs.
And inadvertently kind of creates Marilyn Monroe. I mean, it's the first step of the journey, isn't it? He takes this photo, which is...
She scrubbed herself up to look like a Hollywood star even when she was packing chutes.
Yeah, she did. It's funny, actually, because one thing that her sister says about her is that she always takes pride in her appearance. And when finally she does get to go to the studio and go to the classes and stuff, she said most of the other starlets in training would just go in casual clothes. And she said Marilyn Monroe always dressed up every single time she left the house. And so I imagine she's doing the same thing when she's going to pack shoots.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Yeah, putting her hair in colours every single night, all of that.
Yeah,
I don't doubt it, because I've seen that picture of you. She looks...
Yeah.
Considering they just popped into her workplace and it wasn't set up, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, she's stunning.
Yeah, and then she meets this model agent, right? This is straight out of Dickens. Her name is Emmeline Snively. Don't you just see this like Weasley woman like,
yes.
Oh, you'd be a nice model. Oh, get in that bikini, darling. Snively. Oh. But anyway, she signs her up as a model and she's off, basically. That's it, she's off. She's now a model. She does 2 years packing and modelling before she gives up the packing.
She loves it, doesn't she?
Yeah, and she works really hard.
Hey, she goes from packing shoots to working on shoots.
Yes! Packing shoots, photo shoots. Yes, very good.
But also alongside being a photo model, she also is like hostessing at industrial shows and celebrity events.
Oh, yeah.
And she also takes some shots for a calendar.
Yeah, she does some nude modelling.
She does quite a bit of all different types of modelling over the couple of years, yeah.
Oh, all sorts, pin-ups, because they said she was more suited to glamour modelling than fashion, because she is more curvy. But she secretly confesses to Bernice that she's done these nude shoots and that she wanted to. She's totally happy being naked. She's happy with her body, but she has to pretend she isn't, and it was for the money. It really wasn't. She just was happy doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, so meanwhile, running parallel to this life is Bernice's life back in Kentucky. They moved to Detroit, where the work is, because in the war, I didn't know this, but all those car companies, Chrysler and Ford and stuff in Detroit, turned into defence plants. So that's where the work was, so they moved there. And so, yeah, they started writing to each other from Marilyn being 13, Bernice being 20. Loads of letters, sending photos and stuff. And they first actually met, I think it was 1944.
Yeah, there was a few years between writing and meeting.
Yeah.
And do you know what? Those letters are lovely, actually. And I really got the sense it's like Marilyn was so eager to have this big sister. And the big sister was just so delighted to have this younger sister. And it's kind of like, I think because her mother was just so unreliable and unfortunately quite ill. And of course, don't forget, Bernice lost her older brother, Kermit. So in many ways, they are the only true family each other has. And they both really embraced that. It's lovely, isn't it?
They did. They clung to each other. Yeah, it's the history, to share a history. You know, well, what is my mum like? Well, what do we look like? And then when they meet, it's like, oh my God, look at each other's faces. Look at your eyes. Look at you. You look like my mum. I love it when they got their shoes off. Let's have a look at our toes, see if our toes are the same. They are the same. The middle one's longer. And, you know, they're just so happy discovering it. It's sweet, isn't it?
Yeah, really lovely.
Yeah.
And I felt really pleased for Marilyn to have this, because I was under the impression that she didn't have this kind of relationship in her life.
Me too.
But I think because it was so special and so precious to her, she kept it completely quiet, that we wouldn't know about it.
She did. And they actually said when she got famous, they concocted a story on purpose that said she was an orphan and didn't have any parents or any family, because she just didn't want them to be found out. She did it for them.
But also she didn't want them to find her mother. Who was
in a mental institution. Yeah, all of that.
So she just said that she didn't have one.
Yeah.
But we really have been fed that, because that's part of her legend that exists to this day. People who haven't read this book will absolutely think that Marilyn Monroe grew up in a series of orphanages and then she became a big star. They will not know that she had this wonderful relationship with this sister and also kept in touch with her mum throughout her entire life.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, not that her mum was any use at all as a mum. In fact, she needed her mother.
Yeah, but she was there, though.
She was there, but these two were close right to the end. They phoned each other. She said it evolved from letters. As soon as she started getting money, she became a phone person. It was just always calls, long, long calls all the time. So they got to know each other so well.
And it was grounding for as her career took off. Like, obviously, she created this persona, Marilyn Monroe, and that's what people knew in the industry and outside of the industry. Obviously, she's still Norma Jean, and she gets to be Norma Jean with her sister Bernice.
Yeah, it's really great to have the two names and the two personas. Yeah, it's really good. But meanwhile, Jim, her husband, disapproves of her career.
So they were only married for a couple of years, right? Because... No, 4 years, I think. She was 20 when they divorced. Because even though they absolutely adored each other, obviously Norma Jean's life was going in a different direction. She'd been spotted, she got a modelling job, and Jimmy didn't like it. And it does sound like that Norma Jean was spending all of their money.
She was spending all the money. She was spending everything she earned.
And their money.
She spent all their savings.
Yeah.
What, when he was away in the Marines, she spent all their savings. Yeah, I think he had a right to be annoyed.
Yeah, I kind of get it.
She's doing naked photo shoots and all that, and she's becoming a pin-up.
Yeah, I get how that young man's nose was put out of joint. Yeah. But anyway, they parted on good terms.
Yeah, they did.
And they really spoke highly of each other. And of course, that man, Jimmy, had to see his beautiful wife, who he adored, not only divorce him, but go on to be the most astonishing sex symbol of the 20th century.
Yeah.
Bernice mentions in this book that he wrote a book about Marilyn.
Yeah.
And I forget the title of it now, but it's something like The Love of My Life That Will Never Die. And I kind of think, gosh, he must have been tortured for the rest of his life because she was everywhere.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, and in fact, he remarried, and his wife, they were not allowed to mention Marilyn Monroe in their house because poor new wife, how do you ever compare to Marilyn Monroe?
Yeah.
Until she died. And then when he got the phone call, he said, say a prayer, Norma Jean's gone. And that was the first time he'd mentioned her name in that house for 12 years.
Yeah.
Oh, poor guy.
Where is she now? Well, she's about to get snapped up to becoming an actor. She basically, from modelling, someone sees a picture, sends her to Fox Studios for a screen test, boom, she gets a contract. It's that quick, isn't it?
Yeah, and they put her into all these classes and stuff. So she's just seen as a starlet in training. And she does drama, dance, music, speech.
Yeah, that's the beginning.
The one thing we haven't mentioned yet, I mean, we've called her Norma Jean, but she is kind of has this massive mane of curly red hair. This early stage with Fox, she's not called Marilyn Monroe yet. That's about to happen. And she still looks as she did when she grew up, which is stunning, but really quite different to the Marilyn Monroe that became the global icon.
Yeah.
And then she's in a meeting with the casting director at Fox, and he says you can't be called Norma Jean. Two names just aren't very sexy, but she likes her name, and so she wants to be called Jean. In fact, she has this name that she's invented, Jean Adair, which I think is a really good name, and it really suits her. But he says, no, I want you to be called Marilyn. And then they couldn't come up with a surname, and he said, well, double M would be really good. And she's like, oh, my mum's maiden name was Monroe. And so she became Marilyn Monroe.
Yes, she does.
But she still doesn't quite look like Marilyn Monroe as we know her. You know, they start putting her in little parts in films, and a couple of them are on YouTube. And there's one, oh no, I can't remember what the title of it is now. But there's a clip, and she plays a waitress, and she's gorgeous. And she just commands your attention on this very busy scene full of lots of actors. And she's got a couple of lines and she looks great. And this is like her first speaking role in the movies as Marilyn Monroe. But actually, and she gets a couple of those like small parts. But it's here that Fox actually terminate her contract, which she is very upset about. But because she is in this world of all these new up-and-coming actors, she knows it can be quite routine and commonplace that you can be employed one day, a studio might drop you, but another studio might pick you up. So she's not too worried at this point. But Fox completely let her go.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It really is. And because you would think, she was spotted at the age of 16. Her natural luminescence.
She's off.
Yeah, and
she's not. Yeah, she's back down again. Yeah.
I kind of have a bit of a theory about it. I think she probably is a bit shy and reserved, because even Marilyn Monroe has that in her screen persona.
Yeah.
She's softly spoken, which is an affectation, that voice. You know, she didn't talk like that as Norma Jean.
I know, yeah.
And I'm wondering whether Fox thought that she was just too shy to become an actor in the heady world of Hollywood.
It's quite possible. Yeah, we've read about her through other books where people have seen her at parties. She's just sat on her own.
Yeah.
She doesn't do small talk. She's really shy at parties. She says it herself. Bernice says it as well. She's not really very good at that stuff. But for whatever reason, they drop her.
But during this time, she actually takes acting lessons at the Actors Lab and studies theatre. Now, I never knew that she was in stage productions in theatre.
No. Well, she only did the one.
Was it? But she got good reviews and stuff, didn't she?
Yeah, and that's what got her signed up to Columbia.
Wow.
They saw her in that show. And then she was on to $100 a week.
That's good. Good step
and
up.
on the up again. Yeah.
So at the same time, her mum now has come out of an institution and she's just in the background. And she went to live with Grace, who brought up Marilyn some of the time. But her mum has this thing about dressing like a nurse. Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, I know.
She dressed in white all the time.
I know. She wears all white and pretends she's a nurse, basically, yeah. But she's a mad Christian Scientist.
Yes.
Yeah, and she doesn't believe in medicine. And yet she dresses like a nurse. Very strange.
Then she just completely leaves town again. So she's not always in a mental institution. Sometimes she is well enough to come out and masquerade as a nurse.
But she's no use as a mother.
No, she's not.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So she's at Columbia and they put her in her first proper role, actually, Ladies of the Chorus, and she's singing and dancing and she looks amazing. I've been watching it. It's a real star turn, which absolutely begs the question why they didn't renew her contract, Columbia. They dropped her after that film. It wasn't a hit. But luckily Fox have been keeping an eye on her and they want her back.
This time, it's 1950. This time she's on $750 a week, which is 10 times what she started on 3 years ago at Fox.
They should have kept hold of her.
Yeah, they should have. So it really starts working for her now. And it's so nice reading about her phoning Bernice and going, go to the cinema. You might catch a glimpse of me. Oh my God, there's a glimpse of Norma Jean. It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then it obviously escalates really fast. And she's in Asphalt Jungle, All About Eve. Those are the ones that really get her noticed, even though she's a small part in both. And then she's in Love Happy, which is a Marx Brothers film, and that gets her noticed. Because then she's in We're Not Married, Monkey Business, comedies, Don't Bother to Knock. 1950 to 52, she was just knocking them out of the park. Talking of knocking him out the park, along comes Joe DiMaggio.
Hey, that was a good link.
What a catch.
What a catch. He's a very lucky man.
But yeah, both of them, they're both lovely together. Sadly, he was a bit old-fashioned, and we call it old-fashioned. He was fashioned exactly to his time. Totally modern, independent woman is very difficult for any man of that time to handle, I'd say. And that's what broke them up in the end, isn't it?
Well, they were only married for 9 months.
Yeah, I know. They were together 2 years, married, divorced 9 months later. It's such a shame because I think it really captured America's imagination, the pairing of them. Because he was a total baseball hero, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And she was the sex symbol of all time already. And yeah, it was a lovely pairing. They seemed so happy. Well, yeah, it seems like, she'd done Niagara, she was doing some great films, but then she did 7 Year Itch when she's standing over a grate on Lexington Avenue. Even though it was all filmed in LA, they got her over to New York for that, where her white dress is flying in the air, the legendary image of Marilyn. And they had all the press there because it was for publicity. He was so jealous and angry standing in the crowd watching this, like his wife's legs on show. That pretty much split him up. I think his anger and jealousy.
Do you think that's probably the most famous picture of her, would you say?
Yeah, I'd definitely say it is. I've stood on that exact grill. You can go.
Did you? Were you wearing a skirt?
I think I was in trousers. It was rubbish, but I just wanted to see the spot.
Did the wind blow up your trousers?
Probably. But yeah, it's a shame because, he knew what he was getting into when he married her.
Yeah.
What do you expect, you know?
The one thing we haven't mentioned before Joe DiMaggio even is that the nude calendar resurfaced. And it was a huge scandal. Everybody was like, there are these naked pictures of Marilyn Monroe. And she completely owned it. And she said, oh, well, I did them when I was a struggling model. And people thought it was going to derail her career, but actually got her more interest in her films. Also, what I didn't know is that image of Marilyn Monroe was on the cover of the very first issue of Playboy.
I didn't know that either.
Hugh Hefner's whole industry, was built on Marilyn Monroe.
And he put that nude picture of her on the centerfold without her consent at all, which is really bad.
Well, you don't have ownership of the pictures when you're
no, exactly,
a model. Yes, it belongs to the photographer.
But I know, but this was an absolute first. This is in the 50s. And it's unheard of. Now it's just so normal.
Oh my God, it's insane to think what a furore those naked pictures. And they're very discreet, really. It's not full tit and minge. It's very tasteful. It's just a side view.
Yeah, right.
It's like, and when you think now that people can literally do a sex tape to advance their career.
I know.
Yeah, it's shocking how it's evolved. And I think that could be the catalyst of why she got a sexualized image on screen.
Actually, you're quite
and why
right.
she was offered those roles and why she ultimately became typecast because of these pictures.
I mean, she did really fight to get better parts. People always say, oh, you know, she just insists on doing scenes over and over, or she'd get them wrong all the time. But, you know, I've heard from other sources that she was doing that on purpose. If she didn't agree and she couldn't get things changed, she'd just do them wrong and wrong and wrong until they'd let her do it her way. You know, because you've got no power.
Yeah.
And when the clock's ticking and the money's clocking up, they'll just go, all right, you know. And so she wasn't as much of a nightmare at that point as people might think. She actually had a plan, and she tried to fight to make herself more than just a sex symbol.
When obviously she had a lot of fame and a lot of influence, she started her own production company. But she had to make those films independently. I was surprised at that. The studio didn't back them. So like when she did The Prince and the Showgirl with Laurence Olivier, that's her own motivation to do more serious work because she was fed up of being this kind of bubblegum, cutesy, sexy, breathy woman. I mean, she's very good at being that.
She is. You know, we read Tony Curtis's and they're saying the director, what's the director? Oh, he's a total legend.
Billy Wilder.
Yeah, Billy Wilder. He was going, yeah, she's a nightmare. She's late. She's this, she's that. And then she does a little scene and you're like, but no one else could make that magic happen on the screen.
Yeah,
it's just magic. Yeah, it's worth it. She's just got something. But yeah, so, oh my God, so 1953, she did Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Jane Russell and Betty Grable, and then The 7-Year Itch. It's, oh my God, she had so many good films.
Yeah, classic after classic.
You can forget because she's just become a face, you know, in this day and age. She's just like a face, but the films... Never mind Some Like It Hot, 1958, and Bust Up. And there was a lot of soundtracks often, like Some Like It Hot, Heat Wave, all those. Oh, they're just songs. She's actually a gorgeous singer. I've got albums of her, and she's like this beautiful jazz voice. People don't often mention how good she is at that stuff.
Well, she got typecast as a dumb blonde, I guess. I hate that because she's so brilliant.
I know.
She's so brilliant with comedy.
She's a comedy genius.
Yeah, and I do believe as well that she did realise her own dream of being a serious actress as well. She's great at dramatic roles too. So I think you're right, because her face is just so iconic, we forget.
I know.
Because she isn't regarded as one of the greats in terms of dramatic acting and stuff, but she does hold her own, she really does.
Yeah, she really does. Oh, yeah, I was going to say is the studios go, well, you know, from their point of view, they really think they can make more money from her in those glamorous roles than they could if they gave her a dramatic role. And you sort of go, yeah, you're probably right. You know, that's what people want when they go and see Marilyn Monroe in a film. They want to see
of course
all those gorgeous dresses and some show numbers. And so, you're like, sorry, Marilyn, but that's business. You know, you sort of think you could do a Christopher Lee, no?
Dracula.
Superman.
Christopher Reeve.
You could do a Christopher Reeve and go, no, I don't want those parts. I'm going to go and do a repertory season in the theatre and take some serious roles. But no, she's not, because she spends all of her money and she wants the money. You know, to be fair, she could go and do that, but she's not. She is staying in film.
And mind you, in the 1950s, did those big Hollywood actors actually break off and do theatre?
I don't know, but they could.
I'm not sure they did.
Because then she met, Arthur Miller, and she was going to Actors Studio and working with the Strasbergs. And so at that point, she could have done a Broadway show, or, Arthur Miller's doing A View from the Bridge, all that stuff.
Yeah, but was there the crossover at that point?
I would have thought so.
Is that what film actors did? Was it a possibility?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
You'd have thought she was working on her acting.
Yeah, I think the whole thing of getting with Arthur Miller and moving over to that side of the dramatic arts, as it were, it was a real move to distance herself from the image that she'd kind of built up but had been foisted upon her, that they didn't let her get away from. And I think that you're right. I think the films where she did play Marilyn Monroe were way more successful than the ones where she chose dramatic roles. So, of course, the studio wants to keep her as Marilyn Monroe.
Of course they do.
But she's going off now. She's going to marry Arthur Miller and be seen reading Stanislavski in public and stuff. She's,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. She wants more.
I do too. And as it's saying, everyone thought that was the fake Marilyn, but actually that was the real Marilyn.
Yeah.
She was a voracious reader, as the best people seem to be.
Yes.
And an intellectual, and she hated small talk. She loved having really deep conversations, politics, everything. But the fake Marilyn was actually the one projected on the screen. Yeah. The real one was the intellectual.
And I tell you something, she was quite smart, really, because if she had listened to the studio and continued to be the dumb blonde, they'd have retired her at the age of 32, probably, because she would have been too old to continue playing those parts.
Well, it didn't stop Jar Jar or...
Yeah, but she didn't have the career.
Mae West at 85. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff around this time that we're not being told because she's not telling her sister. She marries Arthur Miller. Oh, she marries and divorces Arthur Miller. It was around that time when she was in Britain doing The Prince and the Showgirl that she read his diary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and finds out he'd written really derogatory things about her and calling her an idiot, basically, that sort of thing.
Oh,
that just
I know.
Killed her, that did.
I mean, how awful.
Yeah.
That, first of all, that he would write that about his wife in his diaries anyway.
I know.
I get that Arthur Miller is a writer, so he does write a lot. But to write that in your diary and then you share a house with this woman.
And leave it lying around, you twat. Yeah,
she actually said, she didn't mean to read it. She just come across it accidentally and then thought, oh, what's this? And then did read it.
Oh, she did.
Like I say, marrying Arthur Miller, doing all this to move away from the perception that she's an idiot. Because she's not an idiot, actually. And then to be in that world and move in those circles and then to read in your husband's diary that he thinks you're an idiot. I mean, oh my God, she must have been devastated. Well, she was, wasn't she?
Yeah, it really ruined her.
So at this point, she's one of the world's most famous actresses. Everybody loves her, but she takes her craft very seriously. She's at the Actors Studio, run by the Strasbergs. What do you think of them?
I suspect that Lee and Paula Strasberg, and I always have.
Oh, good, because I do too.
Because they run Actors Studio, and as soon as they meet Marilyn, they pretty much give it up. They just follow her everywhere she goes, and that's already suspicious. So obviously on a massive payroll. And at some point, she says to her sister, my problem is I don't have any cash. But I, at one point, gave my AT&T shares or something to Lee Strasberg because he wanted to go to Japan and study. So you're like, hang on a minute. And then her sister's there in New York. When they come round, they've got photos for her and the price of them is astronomical. And Joe DiMaggio finds, because he's still hanging around all the time, and he finds receipts and people are charging her 3 times more than what. And she's just getting ripped off from everybody. I don't think she can trust anybody.
Yeah.
Do
you know what? I think it's one thing for a shop to charge her double because it's Marilyn Monroe and she's got the money. But Lee Strasberg, this book, I didn't know this. This book really made me think he's a bloody charlatan.
Yeah. To take her stocks.
Yeah. He was totally fleecing Marilyn Monroe.
I think so. I always have.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've always suspected them, yeah.
And I didn't like it in Tony Curtis's book where Paula Strasberg would turn up on the set of Some Like It Hot.
Exactly.
Marilyn seemed to be under her spell and she would take her direction from Paula Strasberg, not Billy Wilder.
Yeah.
They preyed on her.
They did.
They preyed on her insecurities, didn't
her
they?
vulnerability, yeah.
They fleeced her.
They did, I think they did. And they also really encouraged her to go to therapy, which her sister says she thinks probably helped destroy her because it didn't do her any good pouring it all out. It made it worse. She was in therapy for 8 years.
Well, I think the therapist lived next door to the Strasbergs or something. So they were probably all mates. And the Strasbergs probably said, oh, we'll get Marilyn, then you can charge her loads of money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Probably took a cut.
But do you know what? Marilyn didn't realise that because Lee Strasberg was in her will for a sizable amount of her assets and stuff. So she didn't realise how much she was being ripped off by them.
No, she didn't realise. Anyway, basically, to summarise, it escalates. We're pretty much near the end.
We've got to wrap it up because we've been talking for far too long.
Yeah, she's trying to do a film, then she's ill and they sack her because she's gone and sang for the Kennedy birthday.
Happy birthday to you for JFK.
If anybody doesn't know, like the most sexual version of happy birthday you could ever hear. It's like if they're not having an affair, you know what I mean? It basically said, I'm sleeping with the president. She said it in song. It doesn't say it in this book, but pretty sure she was.
But what I didn't realise though is she'd done that on a day that she called in sick to work.
Yeah, she called in sick for the film. Yeah, so it wasn't really good. So they let her go. Anyway.
Yeah, they sacked her afterwards.
Yeah. And around that time, she randomly died and nobody saw it coming. She was only 36.
Yeah.
And there's a whole other story here. Around that time, she'd moved to LA, bought her own house, and she was very good friends with that whole Rat Pack, which is started with Frank Sinatra, although she might have actually had an affair with Peter Lawford many years earlier. He's the actor of the gang. And you got Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin, she was in a few films with as well. And the Kennedys, of course. And this is where I've extensively read up because I have to name drop here, but because I was lucky enough to know the cinematographer Jack Cardiff, who was the cinematographer on The Prince and the Showgirl, who basically said that he really directed it because Olivier was in it. But he really befriended Marilyn on that. And I was talking to him once and he's talking about Marilyn. Now, her sister said she was perfectly happy, really happy. She had all these plans and she doesn't think it was suicide. And I agree, I don't think it's suicide, but I don't think she was happy because Jack Cardiff said he'd phoned her up. She'd found out he was in LA and she'd said, please come to my hotel. And he'd spent the whole night with her in his arms and she was weeping, saying, everyone's abandoned me. Nobody's here for me. And he's comforted her for a whole night. And a month later she was dead. And I said to him, do you think she was murdered? And he looked up at me with tears in his eyes and he said, I know she was murdered. I know, and I know, I nearly choked. And I was like, oh my God, I can't describe to you how powerful that was, how he said it to me, blinking back tears. And he was an old man then, he's died now, but I was like, wow, that's what sparked me reading all this stuff about her death. And I really believe she was murdered. I read a book called The Assassination of Marilyn Monroe, and it describes, she was naked. She was lying face down, diagonal, in a straight line across the bed with a telephone in her hand when they found her. And it said, even in this book, her sister writes, that does not fit with a drug overdose. Stretched out like that. It's uncharacteristic of a drug overdose. And the police had said, at the very least, someone's tampered with the death scene. Then this book goes into the fact that all the neighbours reported hearing a helicopter land in the garden because Bobby Kennedy was supposedly having an affair with her around that time, as before that Jack had, John Kennedy. And Bobby Kennedy used to come in a helicopter and land in her garden. All the neighbours reported hearing a helicopter that evening. 24 hours later, all of the neighbours retracted their statements. Right? That alone. The police reports were disappeared. The autopsy reports disappeared. In a way, the evidence is in the lack of evidence because it was all disappeared. Everything went. And I also know that because she befriended the Kennedys, it was around the Cuban Missile Crisis time and they were talking all about it. She was listening. She wrote it all down every night when she got home, what they'd said. When they cut her off because she was becoming more erratic and taking more drugs, and she was unstable, no doubt she was unstable. She used to have a direct line to the White House and they cut her off. And she was so upset and insulted that they cut her off. She threatened that if they didn't let her back in, as it were, to their lives, she would tell the papers everything she knew about what she'd learned from them talking. So there's a motive. Anyway, That's in a nutshell what I know, and I can't help but believe that Jack Cardiff, if he said it and he knew her and she wept into his arms, I'm going to believe him, and I think she was murdered. And I think it's probably from the White House. A bit like our royals, you know.
Yeah.
They'll do what they got to do
Yeah.
to keep the White House intact.
Wow.
I mean, her sister says, I don't know, but I know it wasn't suicide. No way was it suicide. That's what her sister says, and that's all she says.
So, yeah, her sister doesn't allude to any murder or anything. No, what she thinks is that it was accidental. But there's one thing her sister says which does not tie up with it being accidental, and her sister probably doesn't realise this. So the doctor came and gave Marilyn an injection because she couldn't sleep. But Marilyn also had recently been prescribed 26 barbiturate pills to help her sleep. So her sister thinks Marilyn accidentally just took a bit too much sleeping medication, which has happened. We know other people who have died in this way. It's a possibility. But what her sister also goes on to say is that on the bedside table next to Marilyn's body were the empty bottles of pills. Now, why would they be empty? If it was an accidental death, like her sister thinks, then Marilyn would have just taken like a couple too many. So there's going to be pills left in the bottles, right? But if the bottles are empty, then that speaks to it being suicide. But her sister says she doesn't believe it's suicide because Marilyn was happy and she had plans and appointments for the following few days. She didn't take her own life. So if those pill bottles are empty on her bedside table, that looks like somebody has come in and staged it to look like a suicide because they've taken all the pills out. You know, how easy to leave a couple of empty pill bottles on the table. That's an easy conclusion to make, isn't it?
Exactly.
We'll never know.
Look, you or I don't have time anymore to read books that aren't autobiographies. But you have to take my word for it, right? I read this whole book, The Assassination of Marilyn Monroe, and it just left me in absolutely no doubt that's a massive cover-up. And she was an unreliable witness, you know, and she had to be disposed of. And it was so easy to do it because she was so unstable and everyone knew she took loads of pills. You know, and the fact that there has been such an uproar about is it murder and they should have an investigation and stuff proves to me that it's really highly suspicious, definitely.
Do you know, I just think the testament, that's Marilyn Monroe, but the testament of Norma Jean is, and it's so sad because obviously her sister outlives her, so we get a bit about her funeral and the grieving thing. It does seem like the people who knew Norma Jean as opposed to Marilyn Monroe never really stopped grieving that woman. Joe DiMaggio sent
true.
red roses to her grave every week
for 20
for the rest
years
of his life.
Yeah.
Bernice said that she'd never really come to terms with it and she'd find herself in church and then she'd just realise that tears are streaming down her face.
Yeah.
It's like those people, even though the world lost Marilyn Monroe, these people lost this very real woman, Norma Jean. It's so sad. It's a beautiful book, isn't it?
It is. And Arthur Miller wrote this play after the fall that she talks about, said it made her really angry. I actually went to see it. It was in London. It was like this character was haunted by her. By Marilyn, and they had a rainfall at one point and sort of projected Marilyn into the rain, so it was a really amazing way of just saying this is like a haunting. She's always there in his mind, present. So, you know, well, you should have done better, shouldn't you then, Arthur?
Yeah.
I can't judge him. I've no clue. I can't judge him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, just don't write a diary, people. That's a lesson.
So it's interesting because this book is one side of Marilyn Monroe, like the Norma Jean side, and yet she doesn't seem to know too much about the Marilyn Monroe side of Marilyn Monroe.
No.
So we get these two contrasting stories, and there's you talking to Jack Cardiff, and you get like another window into her. And she's such a complex, fascinating character.
Yeah.
I mean, are we ever going to really know the real story about her?
Yeah.
We could read another 20 books.
Yeah, we could.
It's kind of endless, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
Her enduring appeal is that there is this open end to her life. It's like we're still questioning it even now. But the one thing we are sure about is that she is actually dead. Not like Elvis, where people still spot him.
Yeah, that's
Marilyn
true.
Monroe is very much dead.
Yeah, no one spots her selling ice creams in Blackpool, do they?
No.
No, but the other thing is she's always going to be beautiful because she never, ever got to age.
Yeah.
So she's absolutely frozen in time as a beautiful icon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. You could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us, or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.